The day we read my husband's will, the sky was the color of old dishwater. It was a gray afternoon, soft and heavy, and we sat in the lawyer's office with the blinds half closed. Papers rustled like dry leaves. My son, Mark, was on my right, his jaw tight. My daughter, Lily, was on my left, her hands folded in her lap, the tips of her fingers pressed together like she was holding a small prayer. Before I begin, would you do one small thing for me? Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know, and I'd love to know where you are listening from tonight. Thank you for keeping me company. This is not a loud story. It is a quiet one, and I will tell it slowly. Mr. Patel cleared his throat and said, "Shall we begin?" His voice was gentle, steady, almost like a lullaby, but the words were sharp in the air. I folded the corner of a tissue and kept it in my hand. My heart was steady but heavy, like a stone you carry because you must. I noticed everything small, the hum of the air conditioner, the neat line of pens on his desk, the blue binder that held our life in papers. He read the first page. The words were plain, but they did not feel plain to us. I saw Lily glance at me with eyes that asked a quiet question I could not yet answer. Mark stared at the table, as if the wood grains could give him a way through. No one raised their voice. We just breathed and sat still while something old and unseen shifted inside our family. "I can go on," Mr. Patel said, and we all nodded. "Yes," Mark said softly. "Okay," Lily whispered, though her hands had gone still. I wanted to reach for them both, one hand to the right, one hand to the left, the way I did when they were small and storms were loud at night. But I kept my hands folded and listened. I am going to tell you the whole of this, because I believe families can choose each other again, even after a hard page is read out loud in a quiet room. I ask you to stay with me, to sit with me like a friend on a long evening. There will be tea and pauses and the truth told gently. By the end, we do not only read a will, we rewrite it with mercy. And in that simple act, we find our way back to one another. Before the will, there was our life. It was made of small things and steady days. I want to tell you about that first, because it holds the shape of who we are. It is the soft ground under the hard moment we faced. I met David on a warm Saturday at a churchyard sale. He was the man who stacked the heavy boxes without being asked. I was the woman who set the plates in neat rows. He said, "You have a careful eye." I said, "You have strong hands." He laughed, and it was a quiet, kind laugh. We walked home that day with a chipped teapot between us. He took the heavier end without a word. In the beginning, that was how he was. Not grand, not dramatic, just steady. He liked simple meals, clear plans, and people who kept their promises. We started in a small apartment with thin walls and a good window. He worked a lot. I worked too. We saved a little and saved a little more. The year Mark was born, David said, "It is time for a house." He looked at me like he was handing me a shelter. Our house is not grand, but it is ours. It has a small front porch and creaky steps that sing when you climb them. The kitchen has a window over the sink, and light falls in like warm milk. When it rains, you can hear it tap the roof like a soft drum. The kitchen table sits under a little lamp. That table has seen homework and birthday cakes, and tears wiped away with a sleeve. I liked to bake bread on Saturdays. The smell filled the house and made people walk slower. I folded quilts and kept them in a basket by the couch. There were plants on the windowsill, basil in summer, rosemary in winter, and always a jar of mint cut from the little patch by the back steps. The table was where truth came out. We did not shout. We passed the salt and said the thing that needed saying. "We can afford the car, but we should wait a month. Mark is having trouble with math. Lily is nervous about the school play." David would listen, fold his hands, and find a steady line through the mess. David planted the mint the spring after Lily was born. He liked to rub a leaf between his fingers, then smell it. He said, "It clears the head." He wore a soft gray sweater on cool nights. It smelled like soap and a little like sawdust because he fixed things after dinner in the garage. The sweater stayed on the back of his chair like a friend who never left early. When David passed, the house changed but did not break. I kept his sweater on the chair. I watered the mint. I wrote small notes and stuck them on the fridge. "Call Mark about the gutters." "Lily's art show, Friday at 6. Buy tea." I did this to remember and also to find my way from morning to evening without getting lost. At night, I sat at the table with a cup of tea. I listened to the house settle. I watched the light move across the wall. Sometimes I spoke to David in a whisper. You would like the way Mark handled the insurance call. Lily made a painting of the park. It looks like a dream you can touch. I do not know if he could hear me. I did it anyway. It felt like keeping a string tied between us. Mark was a boy who liked to fix things. When he was 8, he took apart a toaster and put it back together. It worked better after that. He carried a little screwdriver in his pocket like a secret. When something broke, he would say, "I can try." He grew into a man who still says that, but with more tools and more weight in his voice. Now Mark comes by with a toolbox and a plan. He checks the smoke alarm. He changes the furnace filter without being asked. His shoes leave neat marks by the door. He is practical and kind. You can feel the way he carries duties you cannot see, like a backpack he never takes off. Lily was a child who drew on every blank surface she could find. Not the walls, thank goodness, but the backs of envelopes and old receipts. She made tiny worlds with colored pencils. She sang a little when she drew. Now she teaches art at a school across town. She wears soft sweaters and keeps her hair tied back with a ribbon. She speaks gently. She is the kind of person who listens for what is not said. Between them was a quiet closeness when they were small. They built forts from quilts and shared the flashlight on summer nights. In the morning, they came down the creaky steps like a team, feet thumping in a rhythm only they knew. Mark saved the last pancake for Lily without being told. Lily picked out the green jelly beans because Mark did not like them, and she did. In the years when they became adults, something shifted but did not break. Mark started to talk more with David about money and repairs. I watched them by the garage, 2 shapes moving in the evening. They spoke in a language of numbers and steps. Lily sometimes stood with them, but the talk turned to roof pitch and interest rates, and she went back inside to start the salad. No one meant to leave her out. Still, I could feel a slight edge in the air. I see now that I played a part. When Mark fixed the cupboard door, I clapped and called him my handy man. When Lily held up a painting, I said, "That is pretty," and I meant it, but I should have said more. I should have said, "This is your work, it matters. Tell me about the light in the corner." I did not know then how those little words could carry so far. Mark married Jenna on a clear day with no clouds. She wore a simple dress and held his hands like they were the only thing she needed. Jenna asks careful questions about money and the future. She is not cold. She is careful. "Do you have a plan for the winter bills?" she will ask. "If not, we can help." She keeps the calendar with school days and doctor's visits lined up just so. I have seen her watch her children sleep and stroke their hair with her whole heart. There was a day last year when the roof started to whisper that it needed attention. A little stain on the ceiling, a little drip in a heavy rain. Jenna stood in the kitchen with me. She had a pen in her hand and the worried look that comes when you love people and you know money is not endless. "We should look at estimates," she said. "We should call 2, maybe 3, so we are not surprised." I nodded. "We will, honey," I said. I felt her care more than her fear. Lily married Aaron in a small room with strings of lights. He is quiet in a way that makes you feel safe. He listens more than he speaks, and when he does speak, it matters. He helps with what is right in front of him. If a box needs lifting, his hands are there. If the sink turns slow, he takes a look. If Lily is sad, he does not rush to fix it. He sits with her and says, "I am here." One night after we cleaned up from dinner, Aaron stayed and dried the plates with me. The house was calm. The children had left their laughter in the air like a soft echo. He said, "Lily loves coming here." I said, "I love having her." He nodded. "It feels like home." We stood in that good silence that settles when nothing is wrong and nothing is perfect, and it is still enough. Emma and Theo are the north stars of my days. Emma is 7, with eyes that look carefully at everything. Theo is 4, and he still believes that trucks are alive and that cookies can cure a hard morning. They come running down the walk yelling, "Grandma!" I bend and catch them. My back sometimes protests, but my heart never does. I keep their drawings on the fridge like a gallery. Emma drew the garden with the mint and the small bench. She put a little bird in the rosemary bush, and I loved that she saw it. Theo draws circles and says, "That's you." I believe him. We sit on the floor and build small towns from blocks. When a tower falls, they look at me, and I show them how to breathe, and we try again. David had old ideas about some things. He was not harsh, but he was set. When the talk turned to what comes after, he would say in a calm voice, "It is right for the son to carry the house." He said it with care, not pride. "He will handle the papers and the repairs," he added. "Lily will be fine. She has her work and her art." He meant no harm. It was the world he knew. We did talk about it, he and I, in quiet hours. I said, "Times are changing." He said, "I know, but duty is duty." We did not storm. We folded laundry and kept speaking. "We will make it fair," he told me. "You and I will make it fair when the time comes." I believed him, and in many ways I still do. He was a good man. He just held some things the way he learned them, and I did not push hard enough when there was time. After he passed, we put off the papers. The blue binder from Mr. Patel sat on the shelf by the phone. It had a label with David's name in neat letters. Every few days I would dust around it. Mark would say, "Mom, we should sit down with Mr. Patel." I would say, "Soon." Lily would say, "When you are ready." I said, "Not yet." The binder waited. It did not rush me. Now and then I lifted the binder and felt its weight. It felt heavier than paper should. I would carry it to the table and make tea. I would sit and look at the cover. Then I would carry it back and tuck it upright again. I kept making my small notes. Ask Mark about gutters. Remind Lily about Emma's recital. Make soup. The first tiny friction came on a Sunday after church. We had stew and bread, and the children colored at the table with dull crayons I needed to replace. The talk turned to the roof. Mark said, "I will call the guy I used last year." Jenna said, "It makes sense for Mark to handle it since, someday." She did not finish the sentence. No one does happily. The sentence sat there anyway, like a chair no one wants to move. Lily grew quiet. She folded her napkin into a small square. She looked toward the window. I saw her throat move like she had swallowed something hard. Mark noticed and said, "I did not mean anything by that." Jenna said, "I did not either." Lily smiled, the soft smile she uses when she is trying to keep the peace. "It's okay," she said. "I just want the roof to be safe for Mom." I washed the bowls after they left. The water was warm. The window over the sink showed the yard, still and kind. The mint made a small, sweet smell when the breeze came in. I wiped the counter, then I stood with my hands on the towel and looked at the blue binder. I did not open it. I said into the quiet room, "We are okay." I meant it. But I felt how thin the okay could be if the wind picked up. That week, I did what I always do. I put the kettle on. I watered the plants. I folded the quilt and laid it back on the couch. I wrote a note to replace the crayons. I tucked a flower in a cup on the table. I called Lily to ask how her students were doing on their self-portraits. I texted Mark a photo of the loose hinge, and he wrote back, "I'll swing by Saturday." On Saturday, he came with his toolbox. He kissed my hair and said, "How are you, Mom?" I said, "I am okay." He knelt by the cupboard and tightened the screws. The sound was small and sharp. "All set," he said. Then he looked up. "About the binder," he began, but I touched his shoulder and said, "Next week." He nodded and did not push. He is steady like his father. Lily dropped by on Sunday with a watercolor wrapped in brown paper. "I made you something," she said. We stood by the window and unwrapped it together. It was the kitchen, our kitchen, but softer, like a memory. The lamp glowed. The table was ready for tea. The sweater on the chair looked like a person somehow. "It's beautiful," I said. She looked at me, waiting. I looked back at her and added, "This is your work, it matters. Tell me about the light in the corner." She smiled through tears and told me how she washed the paper first, how she waited for it to dry, and how patience makes colors kinder. When Jenna and Aaron came for dinner the week after, we ate slowly. Aaron helped Theo build a tower under the table. Jenna cleared plates and said, "We should plan a few things, it helps me sleep." I said, "I know." We stood at the sink together, passing plates back and forth. "We will call Mr. Patel," I promised. "Soon." She squeezed my hand in the soapy water. "Thank you," she said. In those days, we were all walking around the same small center, not quite ready to step in. We kept the porch swept. We kept the laughter close. We watched the sky for weather because that is what families do. And the blue binder waited on the shelf, patient as paper can be, like a road map we did not yet want to unfold. The gray afternoon seemed to settle into Mr. Patel's office like a tired guest. He had switched on a small lamp even though it was early. The blinds were half drawn, and the light made a soft stripe across his desk. He offered us tea. I said yes, because tea gives your hands something to do. Files were open in neat piles. The blue binder sat in the center like a quiet anchor. Mr. Patel spoke gently, with pauses that felt kind. I folded the corner of a tissue and set it against my palm. Mark sat on my right, still and straight. Lily sat on my left, small and neat, her hands resting in her lap. Mr. Patel looked at us and said, "I'll read through and stop if you need me to." We all nodded. I could hear a clock somewhere. I could smell paper and a faint cologne I could not name. When he began, his voice was even. He read names, dates, and the small beginnings of a plan David had signed long ago. He read what was for me first. The word said I could remain in my home for my lifetime. He read it slowly. I felt the room steady for a moment, and I breathed. Then he turned a page and read what would happen after that. He said, "Upon her passing, the house will go to your son, Mark." His voice stayed calm, but the words landed in a way that was not calm inside me. There were more lines. Mark will be responsible for maintenance decisions. The property should stay in the family and not be sold outside the family for the first 5 years. The words were about duty. I know that. I also know that they felt like rules pressed onto a heart that was already sore. He kept reading. Lily would receive a smaller bequest, a sum of money from a savings account. It was not nothing. It was not small in numbers, but the page made it feel small anyway. There was a mention of keepsakes for Lily. The word was meant kindly, I am sure, but it sounded like a pat on the head from another time. There was a line that said, "Personal items to be distributed at Mark's discretion with consideration to his sister." It was written in a way that trusted Mark to be fair. I trust him too. And yet I felt how that would sound to Lily's ears. I looked at her hands. She did not move them. I looked at her eyes. They looked at the table, steady as if the wood could hold her up. Mr. Patel closed one section and asked if we needed a break. Mark shook his head. "It's okay," he said. His voice was level, but his jaw was tight. Lily gave a small nod. "I'm fine," she said softly. I held the tissue and said, "Please go on." The room felt warm, but my fingers felt cold, and I folded the tissue again to keep busy. There was a part where David had written about responsibility. He wrote about how Mark had helped with repairs. He wrote about tradition. Mr. Patel read it plainly, without extra weight. Still, it sat heavy in me. Tradition is a blanket that warms some and leaves others in the draft. We finished. Papers were placed back in the binder. Mr. Patel explained that some things could be adjusted with care, but the plan as written was clear. He offered more tea. I shook my head and stood slowly. My knees had stiffened. He walked us to the door. "Take your time," he said. "You can ask me anything, anytime." In the elevator, no one spoke. The soft music felt too cheerful for such a small space. We stepped into the gray afternoon, and the air felt like thick cloth. Mark opened the car door for me. Lily sat in the back, neat as a folded sheet. I could hear the click of her seat belt. We drove without turning on the radio. Traffic moved like a slow river. Mark held the wheel with 2 hands. He was careful, even now. Lily looked out the window and watched the world go by. Shops and trees and signs that meant nothing. My eyes kept going to the side mirror. It showed my face small and older, a woman who was trying to hold a steady line. At a red light, Mark said, "Mom," then stopped. I said, "It's okay." I do not know what I meant by that. Lily said nothing, but I felt the space between my children widen like a quiet field. Not a fight, not a storm, just a distance that had not been there an hour ago. We drove the rest of the way home with the sound of the tires and the soft sigh of the air. At home, I took the blue binder and laid it on the kitchen table. I made tea. When life is heavy, I always put the kettle on. Mark stood by the sink and stared out the window at the mint. Lily sat down and placed her hands on the table. The steam rose and made small clouds. I handed them each a cup even though no one asked. Lily lifted her eyes. "Mom, did you know?" Her voice was not sharp. It was careful, like she did not want to make a new wound without meaning to. I looked at her. I could not lie to those eyes. "I knew pieces," I said. "I thought it would be fairer when the time came. I did not see it like this." Mark stood with his hand on the back of a chair. "Dad always said I'd handle things," he said. He looked at Lily. He said it because of repairs and papers, not because of who he loved more. Lily nodded, but her mouth trembled a little. I know, she said, but words land where they land. We sat with that truth. It did not accuse. It simply sat between us. I felt the kettle's warmth in the cup. I watched a small leaf of mint float to the top. I thought of David's hands rubbing a mint leaf years ago and how he would smell it and smile. I am sorry, I said. The words came from a deep place. I should have pushed harder when we had time. I should have asked him to change the words to fit the love, not the rules. Mark pulled out a chair and sat. Lily reached for a napkin and pressed it to her eye. We can figure it out, Mark said. He always says that. It is both comfort and weight. Days went on, but the edges were sharper. Rain came one night, hard and honest, and in the morning there was a small stain on the ceiling near the hallway. I stood under it with a dish to be safe. It made a soft tap, like a clock that had not been there before. I called Mark. We have a leak, I said. He came with his toolbox and a ladder. He climbed to the attic and looked. We need a roofer, he said. He took photos and sent them to a company he trusted. He moved with purpose. He always does. Later, he said, I can handle the call and the estimate. He did not mean anything else, but the words were heavy now. Lily arrived with a basket of rolls. She looked up at the stain and said, Oh. She stood with me and we looked together. I can help with the bill, she said. Please let me. Mark came down the stairs, dusty and calm. Let's see the estimate first, he said. His voice was even, but it sounded like a decision a future owner makes. We stood in the kitchen. The roofer called back. Mark answered and asked good questions. He paced to the window and back. Lily stepped back and watched. I felt her step become more careful. This was her childhood home, and now she felt like a guest asking where she should put her coat. Jenna came by after work to pick up the kids. Emma ran in with a picture of a ladybug and 2 flowers. For you, Grandma, she said. I pinned it to the fridge. Theo climbed onto a chair and asked for a cookie. Life was still sweet in these small ways. Jenna set her bag down and said, How bad is the leak? Mark showed her the photos. She put her hand on his arm. We will need to plan, she said. She spoke like a person who keeps many balls in the air and does not want any to drop and crack. She looked at me. We can help, of course, we need to know numbers. Her questions sounded sharp because they were close to fear. Will insurance cover any of it? What is the timeline? Do we have to fix other sections too? She tapped her pen on her notebook softly. She was not unkind. She was simply collecting facts to calm the part of her that counts and counts. Lily stood near the sink, quiet. She said, If you tell me what it costs, I can transfer something. Jenna nodded. Thank you, she said. And then, not meaning harm, she added, But Mark is the one who will have to make the call in the end. The room felt smaller. The words were not new, but now they had a different color. That night after the children left and the house grew quiet, Jenna lingered. She was tired. The kind of tired that makes your words shorter than your heart. She leaned on the counter and looked at the stain, then at the blue binder sitting on the shelf. She said, almost to herself, We cannot keep carrying this alone. She looked at me quickly. I'm sorry, she said. I mean the whole planning the way it is set up. It is a lot. I nodded. I could see the long day on her face. I poured her tea. We stood together and breathed. The quiet held us. Later still, after Mark walked her to the car, I heard their voices low by the porch. I did not go to the door, but sound moves in an old house. I heard Jenna say the word burden. She said, This situation is a burden. It was about papers and costs and old rules. It was not about me. I know that. The words still landed on my heart and sat there. Words do that. They find soft places and press their memory there. I did not fight. I did not harden. I poured another cup of tea and held it in both hands. I sat at the table and looked at the sweater on the chair. I thought of David's old ideas about duty. I thought of how love can be old-fashioned and still tender, and how sometimes that is not enough to keep from hurting someone you love. Old memories came like small photographs in my mind. I saw David kneeling next to a low cabinet. Mark stood beside him with a little hammer. David said, You're the man, you'll take care of things. He said it with pride and with love. I smiled back then. It felt good to hear your boy praised. It still does. But I see now how it also placed a weight and made a shadow. I remembered a day when Lily came home with a ribbon from an art show. The ribbon was blue. She held it like a fragile thing. "I won," she said in a quiet wonder. David kissed her hair and said, "That's sweet, honey." He turned back to the bills on the table and said, "We should talk about the car insurance." I saw Lily fold the ribbon and put it in her pocket without a word. There was another night when Lily had painted a big canvas she was proud of. It leaned against the wall in the living room. It looked like sunset caught on water. David stood in front of it, hands in pockets. He said, "It's nice." He added, "Have you thought about teaching more hours? It would help." He was thinking of money, of course. He was not thinking of how the word nice can make a child feel like her heart is small. I remember sitting beside Lily in the kitchen when she applied for a small grant for art supplies. She was hopeful. She did not get it. She cried softly, the way she does with her head tilted down. I brought her tea. I stroked her back and said, "You will try again." I did not go to David and say, "We are going to celebrate her work with a real frame and a real place on the wall." I kept quiet because quiet kept the peace. I remembered a time when Mark and David stood in the garage and talked about investments. They used words that rolled like marbles. I brought lemonade and listened but did not join. I saw Lily stand in the doorway, then go back inside. No one told her to leave. She just did not feel invited by the talk. I should have said, "Come, sit, tell us about your students." I made sandwiches instead. I stayed in the kitchen, which is a kind of staying quiet. The week after the will reading, little things began to feel big. I had a doctor's appointment. Mark insisted on coming with me, which was kind. He sat and took notes while I spoke to the nurse. Lily texted me after to ask how it went. I wrote back, "Fine." Later, she sent a second message. "Do you need me to come by?" I said. "I would love that." She came with soup and we sat at the table. She stirred the soup with the ladle and watched it circle. "I feel outside the circle lately," she said. It was said softly, like she did not want to make the soup sad. I reached for her hand. "I see you," I said. "You belong at this table as much as anyone." She nodded, but her eyes filled and she looked away. There was a Saturday when Mark measured the hall for new lights. "We should brighten this up," he said. He held a tape measure. He stood on a chair. He made plans out loud because that is his way. "If we do this fixture now, it helps the resale one day." He caught himself and winced. "I didn't mean it like that," he added, but the words were already in the air. Lily came in with a bag of groceries and paused. "Resale?" she asked. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "I just meant lights are useful," he said. His face was open and honest and tired. Lily set the bag down and put the bread on the counter. "Lights are good," she said quietly. "We all like to see." Jenna called me in the evening to ask about the roof. "Did the roofer send the number?" she asked. "Yes, honey," I said. "It is higher than we hoped." There was a silence on the line, the kind that holds a lot inside it. "We will make it work," she said. "I am just trying to see the path." I told her I understood. I do. Later that week, I woke early and heard Mark in the yard with a ladder. The sun was pale. The dew made his shoes wet. I opened the window and leaned on the sill. "Do you need help?" I called softly. He looked up and smiled a tired smile. "I've got it," he said. He always says that. It is love and it is habit. It can be heavy. When Jenna stopped by after school drop-off, she had a list in her hand. She talked about insurance, about making sure the bills were on autopay, about checking the smoke alarms. Her voice carried a small edge because it also carried fear. She set the list on the table and looked at me. "I want to help," she said. "I don't want to take over, I just don't want anything to fall apart." I pressed her hand and said, "You are helping, I feel it." There was a quiet evening when Aaron and Lily stayed for tea. Aaron watched the children draw at the coffee table. He smiled when Theo made a green sun. Lily sat by the window and traced her finger on the glass. "Sometimes I feel like the house already knows it won't be mine," she said. "And I know it never was. I don't even want it. I just don't want to feel like a visitor." I took a breath and said, "You are not a visitor. You are my child." We went through a box of old photos one night, just to remember good things. Mark pointed to a picture of himself with a broken front tooth, laughing. "I fell off the porch," he said. We all laughed. Lily pointed to a photo of her in a tutu, standing straight and proud. "I loved that recital," she said. I looked at the picture and felt the love and also felt the spaces that had opened because of harmless words that had landed wrong for years. The small sting of that word, burden, did not go away fast. I would be making tea or folding a towel and it would float back to the surface. I did not blame Jenna. She is good. She is trying to build a safe little world for her children, and for me too. But the word made me look at my own heart and the old patterns tied there. It made me see where mercy was needed and where truth should be spoken gently. There was a Sunday when we tried to have a normal dinner. The roast was good. The rolls were warm. Emma told me about a book at school. Theo showed us how he could hop on one foot. We all clapped. Later, in the kitchen, Mark and Lily stood side by side and washed dishes quietly. The water ran. The plates clinked. It should have felt easy. It did not. Mark said, "Lil, I hope you know I don't want to take anything away from you." He wiped a plate and handed it to her. She dried it and set it in the rack. "I know," she said. There was a pause. "It just feels like a pattern I cannot step out of." He frowned and said, "Tell me how to make it better." She looked at him and shook her head a little. "I don't know yet," she said. In those days, I found myself talking to David at night more than before. "We should have done this differently," I told the empty chair. "You should have listened more to Lily, and I should have asked you to." I was not angry. I was not even sharp. I was tired in the way that wants a repair you cannot make with a tool. I remembered a long ago evening when Lily was little and asked to help hammer nails. David laughed and said, "You can be in charge of cheering." He meant it as a joke. I laughed too. But I see now how often we placed her on the side. The cheering side, the sweet side, not the serious side. I also remembered times when Mark looked older than his years because we handed him duty like a heavy coat. "Take care of your sister," we said. "Look after the house if something happens," we said. He wore the coat without complaint, but it made his shoulders tight. No wonder his jaw is often set. No wonder he feels the pull to stand between everyone and the wind. I carried these memories around like smooth stones in my pocket. I took them out and turned them over. I looked at both sides. I asked myself what I could do now, even if it was late. I knew the binder was waiting. I knew papers could be changed. But papers alone would not make Lily feel different or make Mark feel lighter. Our words and our choices would have to change too. The leak was fixed by the end of the month. The roofer was fair. We paid him. Mark had organized it. Lily had contributed. Jenna had made sure all the numbers lined up. Aaron had carried shingles to the trash with calm, steady arms. The stain on the ceiling got a coat of paint. If you did not know, you would not see it. We all knew. Spring came in, slow and gentle. The mint woke up and sent small green shoots that smelled like a fresh start when you touched them. I trimmed rosemary and tied it with string. I tried to sew a loose button on a sweater and ended up pricking my finger. In small tasks, we find tiny victories. But the bigger thing, the shape of our family, still needed a gentler hand than mine alone. At the school where Lily teaches, there was an art night. We all went. Mark sat in a small chair and smiled at a clay turtle someone's child had made. Jenna pointed at paintings and asked the students questions like a kind aunt. Aaron helped hang a heavy frame for Lily on the wall. I walked slowly and took in the colors. I saw Lily in her place, sure and soft, guiding others to see their own worth. On the ride home, Lily sat with me in my car. The sky had turned dark. Streetlights made little pools on the pavement. She said, "When the wool was red, I went very still inside. I do not know how to move again." I said, "We will move inch by inch. We will not leave you behind." She pressed her lips together and nodded. "Okay," she said. The next morning, I saw Mark at my table with a stack of bills. He was making a list. It was neat. His pen made straight lines. He said, without looking up, "I will stop by the bank today to ask about some things." He meant well. He meant to spare me. I asked, "Can we wait until Lily can join us?" He paused, then nodded. "Yes," he said. His voice was gentle. He looked up and met my eyes. "Yes," he repeated. The second yes sounded like a promise. Life was steady and not steady at once. We showed up for birthdays. We cut cake and took photos. We watched Theo blow out candles with his cheeks puffed. We clapped and called out. We cleaned plates and wiped frosting from the table. Under all that, the will's words sat like a folded letter you carry everywhere you go, even when your hands are busy with something else. I kept the blue binder on the shelf by the phone. It had become a quiet presence in the room, like a person who does not speak unless spoken to. Some afternoons, I took it down and set it on the table. I did not open it. I would make tea and set a cup beside it as if it too needed something warm. Then I would place it back. Not yet, I would tell it. Not yet. One evening, Jenna came without the children. She looked tired and beautiful all at once. She sat at the table and rested her chin in her hand. I want to say something, and I want to say it right, she told me. I am afraid I am not saying things right lately. I waited. The kettle clicked off, and I poured. She said, I love you. I love this house because you are in it. I love Mark, and I want him to be okay. I love Lily and want her to feel seen. I am scared of money because I have been scared before, and it makes me busy and loud. Her eyes filled. I do not ever want to be the reason Lily feels small. I reached for her hand. You are not the reason, I said. This is older than you, but thank you for saying that. She nodded and breathed out slowly. We will find a kinder way to talk, she said. The words felt like a small door opening somewhere in the house. I did not know where yet, but I heard the hinge. Mark arrived later with Chinese food. Lily and Aaron came too. We ate and told small stories about our day. We kept our feet on the ground. At one point, Emma asked where the house would go when you fly away, Grandma. Children can ask a whole life in one sentence. We all went very still. I pulled her onto my lap and kissed her hair. The house will always be where love is, I said. It was not an answer, not really. It was the only true thing I could say just then. After they left, I cleaned the table and wiped the crumbs into my hand. I stood and looked at the chair with David's sweater. I could almost see him there, rubbing a mint leaf and thinking. I could almost hear him say, we did the best we knew. I nodded to the air. We did, I said, but now we know more. In the quiet, I felt the pull to act. Not to rush, to act. I thought of calling Mr. Patel. I thought of asking him to sit with us and explain again, but softer and with options. I thought of finding my own words to tell my children that what is written is not what must stay written. I thought of how mercy can be placed even on paper. Before sleep, I wrote a small note and stuck it to the fridge. Call Mr. Patel, ask about choices. I made another note for myself that said, tell Lily she belongs, tell Mark he is not alone. I turned off the kitchen light and stood for a moment in the dark. The house made its small night sounds. The mint outside brushed the window in a soft wind. The rising conflict had not been a loud fight. There were no slammed doors, no shouted words. It was the slow ache of old ideas meeting present hearts. It was duty, meant in love, landing as distance. It was money pressing on tenderness. It was the word burden touching a soft place and leaving a mark. And it was also love still here, in a toolbox by the door, in a watercolor hanging by the window, in a child's drawing of a ladybug and flowers, in tea poured for tired hands. I held that love like a steady candle as we stood in a hallway where the light had not quite reached all the corners. We were not lost. We were not found. We were in between. And I knew in my quiet bones that we would have to cross this space together or not at all. I found the letter on a Tuesday morning when the house was quiet and the sun was kind. I had a dust cloth in my hand and the radio low, playing a song from when the children were small. I took the blue binder off the shelf to wipe behind it, and it slipped a little in my hands. It fell open on the table, and a thin envelope peeked from behind a tab I had not noticed before. I stood very still and looked at the envelope. The tab said notes, in David's careful handwriting, the same neat print he used to label jars of nails in the garage. The envelope was tucked behind the tab, not with the other papers. It looked like something placed with intention. I touched it with 2 fingers as if it might break, then slid it out and turned it over. On the front in David's hand were the words, "If I did not get to change this, please read this with mercy." My breath went slow. I sat down at the table with the envelope in my lap and waited a moment, like waiting for the kettle to boil. I traced the letters with my thumb. The room felt full and empty at the same time. I opened it carefully so I would not tear the paper. The letter inside was written on lined paper from our kitchen drawer. The edges were soft from being folded. The first line read, "My Grace," and my eyes filled before I went further. He almost never wrote letters. He fixed things with his hands. He made plans with his voice. Seeing his words on paper felt like hearing him in a new way. He wrote that he had meant to change some parts of the plan but had not done it in time. He wrote that he had held to old ideas about responsibility and land because it was what he knew. He wrote that he had loved us steady, but that he had made the plan too rigid. He wrote, "I trusted duty to be good enough, and it is not by itself. He wrote about love. He said, "Love should come before land. If this paper is read after I'm gone, please soften it where it hurts. Be kinder than the rules I wrote down. Trust each other more than you trust my old lines." He asked for something I had not expected. He asked for mercy, not just for him, but for all of us as we tried to do better. The words felt like a hand on my shoulder. He wrote, "Mark, my boy, I am proud of you. Lily, my girl, I see you. I needed to say that more. If there is a place where this plan makes you feel less, change it. I give you my blessing to choose each other again." He underlined the last sentence in a slow, careful way. The ink looked a little darker there. I held the letter in both hands and closed my eyes. I could see him in the garage at night with that lined paper on the workbench, leaning close because the light was not bright. I could see him write "mercy," then sit back and rub his forehead. I could see him fold it and slide it where I would find it if I needed it. He knew me. He knew I would dust and make tea when I did not know what else to do. I read it again, slower. He wrote, "Tell them I am sorry for the way any of this makes them feel less held. I thought good intention was enough. It was not. Let the plan be simple and fair when your hearts are ready. Do not let a house be bigger than your family." He ended with, "I love you all more than I love a plan." I put the letter back in the envelope and sat with it in my lap for a while. The dust cloth lay forgotten on the table. The radio song ended and another began. Outside, the mint leaves moved in a small breeze. I thought, this is a door. I felt the room open a little, like a window cracked in spring. I made tea and placed the letter beside the cup. I did not rush to call anyone yet. I wanted to hold it alone for one long breath. I wanted to be sure I would bring it to the table with a steady heart. I thought of my children's faces at the lawyer's office. I thought of Lily's quiet and Mark's jaw and the way my own hands had felt cold. By early afternoon, I called Mark. I said, "Can you come by tonight if you can?" He said, "Yes, Mom," without asking why. I called Lily and asked the same. She said, "Of course." I sent a message to Jenna and Aaron, too, and said, "Soup tonight. Please bring bread if you can." Jenna sent back a heart and a picture of a warm loaf from the bakery. Aaron wrote, "We'll be there." I took out the big pot and began chopping onions. The kitchen filled with that gentle smell that makes your eyes smart just a little. I browned the onions, added carrots and celery, and heard the soft sizzle. I shook in thyme and a bay leaf. I cut potatoes and slid them in. I poured broth and watched the steam lift like a prayer. Cooking calms my hands when my mind is full. I set the table with quiet care. I put bowls in a circle and a plate for bread. I placed the envelope in the center and covered it with a folded napkin, as if it were a small candle we would light later. I kept reaching out to touch the napkin, the way you do when something important is under it. I checked the clock and then checked it again. They came in the way family does, with coats half off and hello kisses and the sound of children's voices. Emma ran to the fridge with a new drawing of a tree. Theo asked if there were carrots in the soup because he is very fond of carrots. Jenna set down warm bread. Aaron took off his jacket and stacked chairs gently because one of them wobbles a bit. We sat, the soup steamed in our bowls. For a few minutes we spoke about small things. Mark said the traffic was slow but not bad. Lily said her students had turned their self-portraits into a small gallery, and it looked like a room full of brave faces. We smiled and passed the bread, which smelled like comfort. When the bowls were half empty, I rested my spoon and put my hand on the folded napkin. I said, "I found something today." The room quieted in a soft way. I lifted the napkin and showed them the envelope. "It is a letter from your father," I said. You could feel the air change, the way a church feels just before a hymn begins. I held the envelope like it was something alive. "He wrote it and tucked it in the binder," I said. "He wrote, 'If I did not get to change this, please read this with mercy.'" I looked at them each. Their faces were open and still. I took the letter out and unfolded it. The paper made a small sound like a leaf. I read the letter aloud in a slow voice. I read the parts about love before land. I read about old ideas and how they can keep people apart without meaning to. I read the line he underlined, "Change it where it hurts," and I heard Lily's breath catch. I read the part that said, "Choose each other again." I looked up and saw Mark's eyes, wet and steady. When I finished, none of us spoke. The house held the quiet like a careful bowl. I folded the letter and placed it on the table. Emma looked from face to face and then down at her paper. She began to draw with her tongue between her teeth, which she does when she is trying very hard. Theo lined up crayons on the table like little soldiers. Mark put both his hands flat on the table and looked at his sister. He said, "Lil, I did not want to take anything from you." He spoke as if the words were heavy, but he had decided to carry them. "I have been trying to be the rock since I was a kid. Sometimes I do not know how to put the rock down without dropping something." Lily looked at him for a long time. Her eyes were soft and tired. She said, "I do not want the house." She touched the table with her fingertips. "I want to belong. I want to be asked and not just considered. I want to feel like the first page sometimes, not the second page." She swallowed and kept her gaze steady. I took a breath and felt it fill my chest all the way. I said, "I need to tell you something." I rested my hand on the table because I needed the wood to hold me up. Years ago, to help with taxes and paperwork, I signed a paper that tied the deed more firmly to Mark's side. It was supposed to make things easier if something happened or if we needed help with forms. I did not think of how it would feel later. "I am sorry." The words were simple and true. They came from a place that does not like to hide. Mark's face shifted. He looked surprised and not surprised all at once. Lily closed her eyes for a second and then opened them and nodded. "I wondered if something like that had happened," she said gently. "Thank you for telling me." Jenna's hands were in her lap, and she wrung a napkin slowly without noticing. She lifted her head and spoke in a soft voice. "I need to say something too," she said. "I said hard words from fear. I have been scared, and it made me press too hard on the plan and not enough on the people. I am sorry." Her eyes met Lily's, and Lily gave a small, real nod. Aaron, who had been quiet as always, reached for Lily's hand under the table. He said, "We are here. We can do this slowly." He did not say more. But the room felt steadier because of him. Sometimes a few words are plenty when you say them with your whole body. Mark looked at me and then at his wife. He said, "I worry about money more than I let on. I worry about doing right by everyone, and then I end up making decisions alone in my head." He shook his head a little. "It is not how I want to be. I want to share the weight, not hold it all like it is a test I have to pass." Lily drew a small circle on the table with her finger, as if tracing nothing helps you see something. She said, "When I heard keepsakes at the office, I felt like I was being patted on the head. I know no one meant it that way, but that is how it felt." She looked up and held all our eyes in hers. "I am not asking for more money or more house. I am asking for more voice." My throat tightened in a way that felt like both sorrow and relief. I said, "You will have it. You should have had it already." I looked at Mark and added, "You do not have to be the rock by yourself anymore. Rocks are cold. We can be a bench and sit together instead." He smiled a little at that, and the small smile felt like a window opening. Emma lifted her drawing and brought it to the table. She said, "Look." The drawing showed a tree with thick branches. One branch had a crack drawn through it. Over the crack, she had placed a small bandage sticker from her pocket. "It will heal," she said. She put the paper in the center and smoothed it with her palm. We all looked at the drawing for a long time. The bandage was small and cheerful, printed with tiny stars. The crack was still visible under it. It felt honest, like a child's truth always is. We were the tree. We were not straight and perfect. We were alive and still growing. I reached for Emma and pulled her into my lap. I kissed her head and said, "Thank you, my love." She nodded like a small doctor who had said what needed to be said. Theo climbed onto his chair and leaned close to the drawing, as if to add his breath to its healing. He put one of his crayons beside the bandage like a little stick of support. The soup had cooled, but no one seemed to mind. We took our time. The letter lay on the table like a quiet friend. I said, "We can meet with Mr. Patel and ask about options. We can rewrite what we can. We do not have to rush. We can go slowly and keep checking in with our hearts. We can choose mercy over rules." Jenna said, "I would like that." She looked at Lily and added, "And I would like to learn how to ask better questions, not questions that press, questions that open." Lily nodded and said, "Thank you, I will try to answer before I go quiet." They both smiled, small and true. Mark said, "I want the plan to be fair and clear. I do not want anyone to feel like a guest." If it means the house is sold one day and split, so be it. I will let go of the idea that I have to hold it because it was said long ago. I do not want to hold a rule if it keeps me from holding my sister's hand. I looked at my son and felt a warm wave move through me. Your father would be proud of that sentence, I said, and he would nod at the part where you see your sister fully. Mark laughed a little, a soft, surprised laugh. He wrote it down for me to hear, he said, touching the letter. I guess I needed to hear it this way. Aaron said, we can make a list after we talk to Mr. Patel. We can turn it into steps that are plain and kind. He looked at Jenna and Mark. We can decide how to handle repairs and costs now, so no one feels alone. We can keep a record that everyone sees. It will help. The practical and the gentle can sit at the same table if you invite them both. I said, I will call Mr. Patel tomorrow and ask for a time when we can all come. He is patient. He can explain without making us feel small. I folded the letter again and slid it back into its envelope. After that, we will take one step at a time. We will not let fear make us fast. We will let love make us careful. Emma climbed down and went to the coffee table with her crayons. She drew a heart on the tree trunk and colored it red. She said, now everyone knows where the love lives. Theo clapped, then clapped again because he liked the sound. The room felt lighter. The crack was still there, but the air could move through the branches again. We ate the rest of the soup. We passed more bread. We told small stories to make each other smile. Mark shared that he had once fixed a toaster for a neighbor and felt like a hero. Lily told us a student had painted a yellow sky because the sun can live anywhere if you let it. We laughed quietly and let those good words stay. When it was time for them to go, no one rushed to put on their coats. We stood near the door and hugged in a long, easy way. Mark held Lily for an extra beat and said into her hair, you are not second page. She said, I know, not today. Jenna kissed my cheek and whispered, thank you for reading the letter. Aaron squeezed my shoulder and said, we'll be back tomorrow to help clean up the garage if you want. After the door closed and the house was still again, I sat at the table with the letter once more. I ran my hand over the envelope the way you smooth a quilt after you lay it down. I felt both heavy and light. Grief and relief can sit together without fighting if you let them. Love makes room for both. I thought of David writing, be kinder than the rules I wrote down. I whispered to the empty chair, we are trying. I imagined him smiling that small, careful smile of his, the one he wore when a plan worked but took a little longer than he had expected. I imagined him rubbing a mint leaf between his fingers and nodding at the smell. In the morning, I called Mr. Patel as promised. His assistant answered with a calm voice and offered a few dates. I chose one that gave us time but did not let us drift. We will all be there, I said. We want to ask about changing some parts. We want to understand what we can do. She said, of course, and her voice had that quiet kindness I have come to trust. I sent a message to the family group. I wrote, meeting with Mr. Patel on Wednesday at 4. We will go together. Mark wrote back a thumbs up and then added, thank you, Mom. Lily wrote a heart and then, I'll bring my notebook. Jenna wrote, I'll arrange childcare, we will be there. Aaron sent a small smile and a cup of tea emoji, which made me laugh out loud in the kitchen. While I waited for Wednesday, I made sure the house felt like a place that could hold hard talks. I washed the tablecloth and put out clean napkins. I swept the porch and picked mint to put in a small jar of water on the windowsill. I baked a loaf of bread because bread makes days feel held together. I told myself the same thing over and over, like a prayer. People over property, mercy over rules. When Mark came by that afternoon, he found me writing notes. He sat and read the letter again in his own hands. He did not rush. He said, I feel the pressure easing when I read this. He looked up and added, I want to keep that ease even when the world pushes. I said, we will help you hold it. Lily stopped in later with a little plant from her classroom. One of the kids rooted this cutting, she said and smiled. We are practicing patience. We put it in a cup by the sink where the light is good. She touched the envelope of the letter with one finger and said, I feel seen by him in a new way. Tears stood in her eyes but did not fall. Jenna called me after bedtime. I could hear the dishwasher in the background. She said, I was thinking about the word I used that night. I hate that I said it. I told her, you are forgiven, and I will keep telling you when words land hard. That is how we keep the floor clear. She said, "Thank you, I want to do this right." I said, "We do it right by doing it together." The children came for a short visit and ate apples at the table. Emma asked to see the letter again, so I held it up and read just one line. "We will choose each other again," I read. She nodded like this was a rule she could follow because it felt like love. Theo asked, "Can I choose you again right now?" I opened my arms and said, "Always." On Wednesday, before we went to see Mr. Patel, we sat together once more for a few minutes. The house was bright with afternoon sun. We did not say much. We did not need to. The letter lay on the table between us, not heavy at all anymore. It was a bridge. It was the first stone in a new path. We put on our coats and checked for keys. We breathed and looked at each other and gave the small nod families give when they are about to do a thing that matters. We did not know exactly how the plan would change yet, or how the papers would look. But we knew our intention. We would rewrite what we could. We would do it slowly. We would choose mercy over rules, and we would keep choosing each other again and again, until the crack in the branch grew smaller under the bandage and the tree felt steady in the wind. On Wednesday afternoon, we went together to Mr. Patel's office. The sky was brighter than the last time. The blinds were open, and the light made soft rectangles on the carpet. He met us at the door with a kind smile and said, "I'm glad you all came together." He offered tea again, and I said yes, because I always say yes to tea when the talk matters. We sat in the same chairs as before, but it felt different. Mark sat straighter, but his shoulders were not so tight. Lily folded her hands on her notebook and looked ready to write instead of ready to flee. Jenna and Aaron sat close, easy and watchful. I placed David's letter on the table, and Mr. Patel glanced at it with a small nod, as if he had seen such letters before and knew their weight. "I found this tucked in the binder," I said. "He asked us to read it with mercy." Mr. Patel's eyes warmed. "That is a wise word," he said. "Mercy." He folded his hands and added, "Let us talk about what mercy can look like on paper." He took out a clean sheet and drew a few simple boxes and lines. He did not use big words without explaining them. He said, "We can change your will." He said it as you would say, "We can open a window." His tone was calm. "We can write it so your wishes are clear, simple, and kind." He explained that there were a few ways to do that. He spoke about something called a living trust, then stopped himself and said, "Think of it like a basket that holds the house and your instructions. When the time comes, the basket passes easily to your children, and they take the steps you placed inside without extra fuss." He drew a small basket on the page. It made us smile. He said I could write that the house stays my home as long as I live. "That is your right," he explained. "It will be written clearly. No one can push or pull you from it. It is your place." He spoke the words slowly so they could sink in. I nodded and felt my chest loosen. He said that when I pass, the house can be sold, and the money can be divided equally between Mark and Lily. He tapped the paper with his pen and said, "Equal shares, simple to read, simple to carry." He looked at Lily and at Mark and added, "This plan does not put one of you in charge of the other. It puts both of you beside each other." We asked about the deed. He said we could update it so it matches the new plan. "This is like fixing a label so it matches what is inside the jar," he said. "Clear labels make kitchens and families calmer." Jenna smiled at that. She loves clear labels. She gave me a grateful look. Then he suggested something more, an idea for our hearts. "Some families choose to set aside a small fund," he said. "I have seen it help. A cushion for emergencies. It can be simple. You can decide rules together, but they should be kind. You might call it a family fund." He looked at David's letter and added, "Or call it what he asked for." "Mercy," I said. The word felt good in my mouth. "A mercy fund." I pictured a small jar on a table with a soft label, not a jar of coins, but a jar of care. "It does not have to be big," Mr. Patel said. "It just has to be clear." We talked about what that could look like. We agreed it would be a small savings account we all can see. It would be for needs that come like sudden rain, medical bills, a broken water heater, a rent gap, a set of braces, a quiet crisis that needs a soft landing. We decided that if anyone needs it, they simply ask. No speeches, no shame, just a simple, "Can we use the mercy fund?" And we say yes if the need is true and now. We spoke about how to begin. I said I would seed it with some of my savings. Mark and Jenna said they would add a small amount each month. Lily and Aaron said they would do the same. Even $20 is a stitch, Aaron said. Many stitches make a strong seam. We all nodded, because that is how families hold. Mr. Patel walked us through the steps. He said, "First, we write your new will." He held up one finger. "Second, we make the little basket, the living trust to hold the house and your instructions for after." He held up a second finger. "Third, we update the deed so that it matches the plan." He held up a third finger. "We can also add a short, plain letter from you to sit on top, the way your husband left his. Words soften paper." We asked questions. He answered slowly and kindly. He did not rush us. He showed us where to sign. He told us which pages would go into the blue binder and which would be kept in his safe office. He wrote a short list for me to take home. Will, trust, deed, mercy fund. 4 little words, clear steps. He looked at the 3 of us children and said, "You get to choose how you share the work. Decide now while the room is kind." Mark said, "I will still handle repairs for now, but I will send notes we can all see." Lily said, "I will track expenses and keep a simple, honest ledger." Jenna said, "I will handle due dates and set reminders." Aaron added, "I will lift heavy things and keep a ladder steady." We all laughed softly at that, and the laughter did not feel like we were avoiding anything. It felt like a light coming in through the blinds. Mr. Patel smiled, folded his papers, and said, "I am proud of you, not as a lawyer, as a man. You are doing something that takes quiet courage." We signed some initial forms to begin. The pens scratched the paper in a steady rhythm. I felt the old plan loosen like a too-tight collar. I did not feel disloyal to David. I felt loyal to his letter. I felt loyal to the best of who he was. Before we left, I took the letter from David out of its envelope and placed it on top of the papers Mr. Patel handed back. "Keep it there," I said. "It keeps us soft." Mr. Patel nodded. "The best papers are held down by love," he said gently. "It keeps them from blowing away when a hard wind comes." We walked out into the late afternoon and the air felt clear. We did not talk much in the elevator. We did not need to. In the parking lot, Lily reached for Mark's hand and squeezed it once. He squeezed back. Jenna looked at me and said, "This feels right." Aaron opened the car door for me with his quiet, old-fashioned grace. The next few weeks had a new calm shape. We went to the bank together and opened the Mercy Fund. The teller asked what to call it, and we all looked at each other. "Mercy Fund," we said in the same breath. The teller smiled. "I like that," she said. "That is a good name for an account." We made our first small deposits and watched the number appear. It was not huge. It was honest. We signed the new will. Mr. Patel kept the words plain. "The house will be sold after my passing, and the proceeds divided equally between my children," it said. "I keep the right to live in my house for the rest of my life." My name was there, and my hand wrote itself steady. The letters came out neat, as if they knew they were writing a kind of peace. We finished the trust, and the deed steps with patient help. It was like laying a path of stones across a little stream. We tested each stone with our foot before we put our weight down. When we were done, we stood on the other side and looked back. The old bank of the stream was still there, but we were not stuck on it anymore. Then we decided to put Mercy into action, not just into papers. We picked a Saturday to work on the house. The roof had been fixed by the roofer, but there were still small things to do. The gutters needed clearing. The old stain on the ceiling needed a new coat of paint. A loose shingle near the edge needed sealing. Mark led the day with a list on a clipboard. He said, "We will start with the gutters, then paint, then check the flashing." He handed out simple jobs like we were a small crew. Lily stood by with a notebook to track what we bought and what we used. "I will keep the receipts," she said. "We will all see them." Jenna set a cooler on the porch with sandwiches, water, and cut fruit. "No one forget to drink," she said, pointing her pen like a coach. Aaron set the ladder and held it firm and steady. The morning air was cool and sweet. The leaves were just starting to curl with summer. We worked without hurry. Mark climbed the ladder and Aaron kept it still. Lily read out the list and put small ticks next to each task. Jenna called out, "Break in 10 minutes," like the kind of care that makes work feel safe. Emma and Theo drew chalk flowers on the walkway and made a welcome crew sign with stars and hearts. At one point, Mark held a shingle and looked down. "Aaron, careful," he said. "There's a soft spot." Aaron shifted his hands and said, "I've got you." Mark nodded and breathed. He looked calm. He looked like a man who was not alone on a ladder for the first time in a long time. Lily came inside with me to paint the ceiling stain. We put down sheets and took our time. We rolled on the first coat and I watched the old mark fade. "It is like a bruise," Lily said softly. "It changes color, and then one day you do not care to look for it anymore." We stood back and admired our work. The new paint glowed in the afternoon light. At lunch, we sat on the steps and ate sandwiches. No one looked at a clock. We told little stories. Mark said, "Do you remember when the gutter overflowed and made a waterfall on my birthday?" Lily laughed. "We ate cake under the porch like it was a tent," she said. Jenna asked Emma to pass napkins. Theo wiped his face and then wiped mine, and we all laughed.